picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
I'm back in the saddle again. Out where a friend is a friend.
Okay, we are back at work. It's been a couple of weeks, and it's time to get back on the horse. Life goes on. Let's get back to some modeling. The Barbarella ship. Now 3PO. I'm sorry, I'm jumping horses here. 3PO's done. He's in the other room. Barbarella is what we're back to today, and before I stopped work on this, I lightly sanded it with a very high grain sandpaper to kind of smooth out the finish that was left from the nail polish paint. And looking at it and coming back to it after being away from it, I realized that perhaps it is a little too pink, a little bit too deep of a pink. It's a very good start, very good base, but just a bit much. The first time with the Tamiya pink was too coral or too flamingo colored. It was not pink enough. The nail polish is perhaps too pink. So what I'm going to do is, when I was out last week, or a couple days ago, I picked up this Citadel color that is Emperor's Children is what it's called. Emperor's Children pink. And I'm going to do a light dust coat over this to kind of brighten up or whiten up the pink there a bit. It's a very good base. It's very, very close, but I think it's just a little too much. And what you're seeing on the camera right there is what is the color that I want. But when I see it in real life, it's a little too dark. The camera actually lightens it up a bit. So that's when I'm looking at the camera, that's the color I want. So it's just a question of mixing some of this up and dust coating over top. Much, much better. Very much happier with that. Now, I don't know whether you can tell on camera what the difference is since the last time I coated it, but it's a lot more Pink Panther-y type of pink, if that means anything to you. Couldn't bring myself, I didn't have the heart to do it. I couldn't bring myself to paint it the whole flat color that the life-size prop was. It was all one tone of pink with a streaking on it, which I haven't done yet. But it was all pretty flat movie set painted pink. And what I did, I couldn't do it. I had to leave like areas of darker pink, like right up in here and in the creases. That fingernail polish paint that I'd used last time. I just dusted this over that, really. Tried to make a nice even tone in some places, like on the flats, but didn't try to get into every little recess and crease because I wanted that dark color in there. Just gives it a little bit more life than the flat coatedness of the prop. So that's where that is. I'm going to let that dry really well because this is water-based and it needs to dry. So I think I might even take it outside, being that it's another scorching day out there, and let it air dry for a while and then start putting the streaking and painting the other bits on there. But good for now. Okay, the thing I'm finding out about this pink is that it looks different in almost every sort of light. So when all else fails, you take it outside and you figure out how it's going to look there. And this pink is dead on. Now here you can tell what I was talking about as far as leaving some of the darker shades of that pink in there to give it a little bit of life and texture and body and all those hair color terms. So now it's going to sit out here and cook for a while. I have for you now a tale of second chances. Years ago, I've been going to Wonderfest now for 10 plus years. Actually, I think 12 years now. 10 or 12 years now. And in my early days of going to Wonderfest, I saw the thing called the resin kit. Resin kits always back then scared me because A, they were expensive, and B, they weren't the traditional snap together or glue together styrene kit, and it was a alien concept to me. But there was one kit that I kept seeing at Wonderfest. And I saw it for years, and every year I passed it by because of the intimidation factor. It just was so big and so gorgeous looking and so marvelously packaged that I figured there's no way I can afford this. And so I kept passing it by. You know, I was dizzied by other flashier kits that were more up my alley, starships and things like that. I was not a big creature builder until a couple, 3 years ago when I, started getting into painting creature kits that didn't have to light up or didn't have to, make noise. They weren't starships. So once I got out of my comfort zone with that, I started investigating and started wanting to do natural kits. And of course, by the time you go back to finding that kit, it's long out of production, and you can't find it. It's gone. It was like ephemeral. It burned up, and your chance to get it was gone. Well, I had an opportunity from a good friend of mine named Jimmy, who is a magnificent sculptor in his own right. But he had one of these kits in his attic or a storage room that he was not going to get around to building. And he asked me casually, hey, any interest in that? And my heart went up into my throat like this. And I went, yes, I want to get this kit because now that I've done a number of creature kits, I really feel that I could do it some justice. So I said, well, of course, I'll take this off your hands. I mean, come on. What's a friend to do? So this week I took delivery of it, and I'm very happy to get a second chance at building something I thought was out of my grasp, or out of my ability to find one. So we cut here, and I'll show you what it is. Bing! And here it is. This is the Narfel the Garthok resin kit. When I first saw this, I was intimidated by it. And this was one of the very first resin kits I ever saw at a Wonderfest years upon years ago. But I just want to walk you through how excellently this thing is packaged. I mean, look at this. Custom cut styrofoam for each of these pieces. And the thing is friggin' huge. Now, despite what you may think this is actually a totem for the display. Yes, it has that dubious shape to it, but it, after all, is a cone head. But look at this. I mean, here it, and look at the detail on this casting to begin with. I mean, that's just simply gorgeous. Nary a seam to be dealt with. A little bit of seam work to do there, or molding work to do there, but hardly any at all. And this is just the top layer of parts. Let me pull out this first tray, set it aside. I mean, the box is huge. The box is easily 24 inches, 18 by 24, something like that. This is the main body. Head goes in there, obviously, and all the limbs are letter coded so that you know that piece L goes there, even though, I know that's left arm and that's right arm, but they are coded A and B. Here is the bottom jaw part that attaches to the rest of the head like such. But this is the top tray. This is the bottom tray. Again, all of the pieces were, I know you see some of them are not because I've taken them out, but all the pieces were individually bagged, and that's the big monster base for it. And this is the second tray that fits it. Now, this is just a marvel of presentation, a marvel of packaging, because this kit is at least 10 years old, and it looks as fresh as the day it was cast. And that's all down to how well this was presented. But like I said, this is a second chance kit because I never thought I would have one in my grubby hands again. And many thanks again to my friend Jimmy. So the opportunity of finding this or getting this jumps it in head of line of some other kits. So I'm going to, whilst I finish up on Barbarella, I am going to at least get it put together and puttied. I doubt I'll get anything else done on it this weekend beyond that, but I might get it put together and puttied. Okay, let's take a look at some of these parts from the Garthok. And what's concerning me most right now is that this is very heavy. All of the parts have spots for pins, and I think that's going to be a very smart idea to put some brass pinning in between some of these places to reinforce. Now, of course, I'm going to put it together with CA glue, but and then fill in the gaps with some putty. But I can really see the value of putting a little bit of brass rod in there to help reinforce these holes, like I say. But the fit is amazing. I'm sitting in it here on sandpaper so that I can, or sandpaper that I've got mounted down to a board, so that I can give it a quick, flat sanding to knock off some high spots. But I've got to tell you, these fit with very, very minimal seam lines. Even as it is, so it was just that well cast. So we'll see where the puttying needs to happen and where it doesn't, but I'm excited to get on with the construction, so pardon me while I build. Okay, I've got some of the minor or some of the secondary construction done. I don't have it all put together yet, and some of the parts went together very well, and some of the parts, even with some sanding and some pinning, still didn't go together well. I mean, they left gaps. And yes, I could have, like that one, I could have sanded that down and tried to get a tighter fit, but then I'm afraid if I had sanded it down too much, I would have messed up the lines of this muscle. So I thought it was easier to put it in position so that the muscle shapes were consistent, and then I'll just use some epoxy sculpt in there to fill in the lines. I mean, there's enough glue mating surface to make sure I have a good attachment, but I can just fill those in with some epoxy sculpt and fill those areas in and make them stronger, and also retain the lines of the musculature. I only had one accident while drilling out holes for pins. I hit a thin spot. I hit a thin spot on that hip, so I'm going to have to patch that completely with some epoxy sculpt. But for a kit as old as this is, the resin is in still remarkably good shape. Now you can see the obvious lines there that I will have to fill in. But it's a organic shape. It's a natural shape. I can put some putty in there and then texture the putty to mimic the skin shape or the skin texture, and will still be good. Now the head, and particularly the lower jaw of the head, I will not be putting on because I need to paint. I need to paint the mouth, inside the mouth, and once those two parts are together, I can't get in there very well to do the tongue and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is paint this as a separate piece, and then paint this as a separate piece outside of working on the rest of the body, and then I will attach them after they're painted. Because this was a stop motion character, stop motion figure, there are some obvious joint lines that were built into the design of it, which have been carried over to this kit. Most notably the wrists. The wrists have some sort of manacle on the end of the wrist, and there's like a collar there, and manacles at the end of the arms, which help disguise the fact that it was a stop motion kit, but also are going to help me in the painting of this, because I will be able to paint these elements separately and then attach them and not have to worry about trying to blend the skin of the wrist into something else, or blend the the head into the neck, because there really is no blend line. The last bit of major construction I have to do is to put the tail end onto the front end, and that's going to be the trick. So that's next step. Okay, for this all-important butt joint, and it is literally a butt joint, I've decided to forego the CA and actually use some instant 1-minute epoxy on that, because it's going to have to hold up a lot of weight, and I think the epoxy will fill in and any of the divots and creases and really give me a better bond than the CA will. Plus I can position it a little bit while it's setting up, whereas you know, CA, you stick it, and if it's not in the right spot the first time, you're SOL. So I'm going to put some 1-minute epoxy on that and hold it, and obviously I can't be filming that because I don't have the hands for it, but I will hold it, and then I'll show you the results. Okay, here's a rough idea of what the completed Narfel, or no, the completed Garthok, will look like pre-narfeling. This is the totem that goes on the base. Now I noticed something funny about, well, obviously the totem has to be scribed in there. It doesn't quite fit right, so I'm thinking I'm going to end up sitting that on a bed of clay or epoxy or something, just to get it in place. I don't, whether the over the years this base may have shrunk and aged differently than the rest of the kit. I thought something was up until I realized that foot is made to be up off the ground. It's caught in mid-motion, so yeah, it's raising that foot up off the ground. It needs to be pinned down or nailed down, something like that. But you get an idea of how huge this thing is. This totem here is probably 14 inches tall. So it's a big kit. And like I said earlier, I want to paint the head separately, the lower jaw separately, and then put those two pieces together and then add it to the neck. These massive claws need to be addressed individually, so because of that wonderful joint there, I can paint the body without the claws in there. Plus it'll help me get to the other areas that I need to fill and sand, and then put the paws in later. But you can see that big old hole there that I just need to go ahead and get out some epoxy sculpt and fill that up and let it sit with the rest of it before I sand and do the seaming, the unseemly seaming. Okay, I've started the process of puttying in the obvious seams. I'm not going to try to do all of them at once. I think it's just going to put too much stress on the model and the handling of it. I wanted to get the biggest gaps, like this one in the leg, taken care of, and then let those set up. And like I filled in that waist gap that resulted. So I'm going to let these fill in and dry, and then I'll come back and do the finer work. But I wanted to get the big gaps taken care of. So let that sit, and maybe I'll go out and get some lunch. This has all been Saturday morning, and it's been a productive one, but the wind looks like it's picking up outside. We might get a storm, so let me go out and get some lunch before that happens. It is Saturday late afternoon, and I've just gotten back from lunch and a movie and trying to make myself happy. And I've gone back and I've taken a little bit of the old friend Bondo and touched up the seams. The epoxy sculpt has had a chance to set up and looks good. And some of the minor seaming that needed left to be done, I just put some Bondo in there. And I'm going to let that dry overnight and do some sanding tomorrow and come back and maybe take the Dremel and work on some more blending and sanding on that tomorrow. And then we'll get a primer coat on everything. And that should be the extent of the work on the weekend for him. It is the end of a Saturday evening. Not been working on this full time, but come back to it long enough to paint the silver stripes and the black on there. and the silver accents. And I started painting these with a brush, but I'm going to go back over them with an airbrush, and meaty fisted fingers that I've got a little silver up there that I can hit with a spray tomorrow and knock that back down. And then it's going to be a question of putting the weathering on. But like I said, remarkably simple model, so it's going to finish up pretty quick. Okay, it is Sunday afternoon, and I have done a bit of sanding. All of this Bondo and Epoxy Sculpt has had a chance to set up overnight, and I just took a Dremel to it and have been trying to sand down into the folds of the flesh and that sort of thing, and grind the filler out. And now what I'm going to do is cover him with a coat of my famous, or not my famous, I didn't make it, but my old reliable and handy filler primer, auto duplicolor primer filler, just to see what seams might still need a little bit more attention. Time to do a little totem work. I've got the main body outside with a coat of primer on it, and I'm going to gray in the face here. This has got a red sandable primer on it. Actually, it's more of a terracotta-ish, and I'll be bringing out some browns in that, but I want to put a gray base on that, just the face part. Okay, I believe I have reached a point of diminishing returns on the Liberty one, which is the Barbarella ship for this weekend. I'm just touching silver and pink, and every time I touch the silver I end up getting some on my fingers and getting it onto the pink. So what I'm going to do is I've fought it to a standstill at this point, and I am going to let it dry and then hit it with a coat of clear to seal in this work, and then I'll go back over and touch these strips again, because that's what's happening, is it's hitting wear and wearing off, and when I do that I end up carrying it to places that need to stay clean. So gonna let that dry and put a coat of clear on it and call that a weekend. I just cleaned out the brush with the pink on the inside of the jaw and some of the face of the Garthok that will eventually need some sort of pink underneath it. It's not by any means a finished color. Like I said, I'm just clearing out the brush on it. And I think one more coat on this with an overall dark com art to go into all of the creases, and then it'll be done for the weekend. And here's where we leave it for this weekend. Garthok, the seams hid themselves pretty well after one coat of little spot puttying and then some sanding. There's only one pretty obvious seam that needs working on, and that is right here at the top of the thigh. I need to do some more blending and puttying in there, but the other seams are pretty well hidden, and what you think are seams are actually bits of the way that the creature was designed. There's a little bit of seam there on the hip that I need to worry about. You would think that that's a joint there at the base of that wrapping, but it's not. That's just the base of the wrapping. A lot of it had to do with how the creature was designed for stop motion, I'm almost sure. These plates in here you'd figure are a joint, but they're not. They're plates. The joint's right here. It could stand to have a little bit of roughed upness to it. I think once you get some paint on them, they'll further disappear. But and I think the biggest issue to work with is how this thing is going to sit on the stand, because it is not. It's got little foot imprints where you'd think the feet would go, and that's not turning out to be where the feet go. So gonna have to do some adapting of that, and the totem doesn't quite fit in the space that's allowed for it. So if you put that 1 foot in the imprint then the foot in the back doesn't quite fit. So I might just fill those in and resculpt something there. I've given this base a coat of that sand texture paint that I like to use so much to kind of give it a sandy texture. This won't be the final color of it. I'll paint it, of course, but it does add that sandy texture to the base. And you see some conehead skulls popping out of there that I'll pick out with a different color. But you can see where this doesn't really fit in very well and stand up. I might have to do some excavating around there to get that to fit. But small worries there. But join us again next week where we will go full on Garthok, and we will be painting all of the, or at least some of it, because this is where I get into that problem of painting over myself again. But we'll at least put base coats of color on here and start picking out details. And that's it, I think, for the weekend. Well, that's going to wrap up another week. As you may have noticed, we did not do a lot this week, and that's because I am working myself back up to having the strength and fun and energy of getting back into doing some model making. The more astute of you people out there in my illustrious audience might have recognized the fact that there was no report last week. And there was no report last week because I was up in Pennsylvania where I had to attend a very sad duty. My sister Jan passed away. So we had a family gathering last week, and I was up in Pennsylvania sharing memories with my family, and I advise you to do the same. You know, we're only on this rock for a short time. So I promise I try to keep these videos nice and light, so I try not to bring too much doom and gloom into the videos as I'm reporting, but you know, life has a way of creeping in on you when you're not paying attention to it. So I learned some very valuable lessons from my sister. First of which is to be your own self. And she was probably, of all of my sisters, and I say hi to all of them who are watching, she was probably the most true to her own self and ideas. And she taught me that you're not always going to be liked or popular for your ideas. And that's okay, because you're the one that has to live with yourself 24/7. She was a counterculture person in the truest sense of the word. Child of the, well, she was 60 years old, so I remember growing up with her in the 60s, and she was an original hippie back before that was a dirty word. Danced to her own drum, definitely. And also, I have to keep reminding her that, or she reminded me, back in 1977, back when I was still up in Franklin in a small town, she was in a big city, and she happened to cross a movie, and she was in a preview show. She was one of the premiere showings, and I remember her calling me and say, you know, I just saw this movie called Star Wars. If it ever gets up there, you really should take a chance to take a look at it. I think you might like it. So she always reminded me that she saw Star Wars first, and I never forgave her for that. Excellent cook. All-around small person. Did spend some wonderful quality time with my family. Ate some wonderful food. Yes, it's true that most of my memories revolve around food, and if you knew why, there's a reason I only shoot from here to here. Most of my pleasant memories of childhood revolve around food. So I had my Leonardo sub, I had my Polly dog and malt. I did all of the things that I wanted to do while I was up there, but unfortunately it meant I had no video to show you all last week. So we'll get back into the groove. We will be working on Garthok 24/7 now, getting him done, and then we will get into the rest of the summer's building. So sorry for the diversion, but back to business as usual. So until next week, if it's too hot outside, build a model inside. Have a good week.